They say surprises are supposed to make you smile. They're supposed to be sweet, thoughtful, like a forgotten anniversary remembered or a warm hug on a cold morning. But no one talks about the other kind of surprise, the kind that knocks the breath out of your lungs and leaves a question mark hanging over everything you thought was real. That's the kind I got. And I swear, I still remember the smell of the room when it happened. Lemon and lavender. That's what I'd sprayed just before they arrived. I wanted everything to feel calm, clean, safe. I had no idea how much everything would unravel in just one night. It's been 2 years since that evening. 2 years since I saw the look in my husband's eyes and his best friends. And I still don't know which one broke me more, the man I loved, or the one who saw straight through me. You ever been in a moment where everything feels off, but no one's saying a word? Where smiles feel stretched too tight and silence feels louder than it should? That was the night. The wine was poured. The music was low. And the table was set for 3. Just 3. Me, my husband, and his best friend. The candle flickered like it knew something I didn't. And the way they both looked at me, it was like they were waiting for something. Something unspoken. Something dangerous. I laughed. Tried to shake it off. Tried to pretend I didn't feel like I was standing in the middle of a game I didn't know the rules to. But deep down, I knew. There's a moment, just before your life changes. It's so small, so subtle, that if you blink, you miss it. But I didn't blink. I saw it. I felt it. And I ignored it. That night, I learned that not all betrayals start with lies. Some start with silence. With glances. With 2 men standing in the same room. Planning something I never asked for. And you know what hurts the most? It wasn't even what they did. It was why they did it. And when I tell you what happened, you might judge me. You might pity me. You might even see a part of yourself in me. Either way, you'll understand why I can never look at surprises the same again. So before I take you into the story, before we walk back into that room, back to that dinner table, back to that moment that changed everything, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like the world around you was a scene someone else wrote, and you were just there to play the part? Yeah, that was me. If stories like this stir something deep inside you, subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart. Daniel and Troy had been best friends since college. The kind of friendship people write essays about, inseparable, unbreakable, built on years of stories and secrets I could never be part of. When I married Daniel, I knew Troy came with the package. I didn't mind. At first, it was even comforting. Troy was like a shadow that didn't bother me, always around, always smiling, always easy. Daniel. He was charming in public. He always had the right words when people were watching. But at home, he was distant. Busy. Always answering a call. Always late. Always just a little too tired. And me? I started feeling like a background character in my own life. There were days he didn't even look at me when he walked through the door. Nights he'd turn away in bed before I even had a chance to say goodnight. I kept telling myself he loved me. That it was just stress. That it would pass. But it didn't. And then, there was Troy. Troy was different. He'd show up unannounced with takeout when Daniel forgot dinner plans. He'd ask about my day and actually listen. He'd lean in when I spoke, as if every word I said mattered. I told myself it didn't mean anything. That I was just lonely. That I was overthinking things. But when you go long enough without being seen, even a little attention feels like sunlight after a long winter. Our house looked perfect from the outside. White shutters. Fresh paint. 2 cars in the driveway. But inside, it was cold. Not physically, but emotionally. Rooms filled with silence. Counters lined with reminders of a life I wasn't sure I belonged in anymore. Daniel's coffee mug always sat half full on the kitchen table, the coffee cold, untouched, just like the space between us. And sometimes, Troy would pick it up, smile, say something like, "Still not finishing his coffee, huh?" And I'd laugh. Too hard. Too long, because in that moment, someone noticed. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was attention. It was presence. And sometimes, that's more dangerous than love. I never asked for it. But I never stopped it either. Looking back now, maybe I should have seen it coming. Maybe it was already happening, long before that night. Maybe the real betrayal didn't start with a touch or a kiss. Maybe it started with a glance. And when you've been starved long enough, even crumbs can feel like a feast. That's who I was. A woman sitting across the table from two men, one who promised me everything and forgot how to keep it, and one who never promised anything, but kept showing up anyway. I told myself I was fine. But the truth? I was breaking. Quietly. Invisibly. And no one noticed. Except him. It was a Friday. One of those gray, cloudy afternoons that feels like it's waiting for something to go wrong. Daniel came home early. That alone should have tipped me off. He never comes home early. He smiled, held out a box like he was offering me something precious. Surprise, he said, almost rehearsed. A spa day voucher. A fancy one. Name brand, high-end, typed note from the receptionist stapled to it. I smiled back. Said all the right things. Thank you. That's so thoughtful. But it wasn't. It was expensive. Not thoughtful. Because I'd mentioned that spa 3 months ago once, when I was half asleep and aching for a break. He hadn't remembered because he cared. He remembered because he needed to check a box. And then, before I could even put the voucher down, the doorbell rang. Troy. He stood there with wine and a crooked grin. You're not gonna believe it, he laughed. I brought your favorite. Thought we could have a little Friday unwind. Daniel was standing behind me. I could feel the shift in the air the second Troy looked past me and saw the gift in my hand. They stared at each other for a second. Not angry. Not shocked. Just aware. Like they both realized they'd stepped into something that wasn't part of the plan. Me? I was just standing there, holding a gift from one man and staring into the eyes of another who looked at me like he already knew I didn't feel seen. I invited Troy and Deanna. Of course I did. What else was I supposed to do? We sat around the table, 3 people, one too many surprises, and a silence that hummed beneath every smile. Daniel poured wine with the stiffness of someone who didn't want to be outdone. Troy made jokes. Easy ones. The kind that made me laugh even though I didn't want to. And every time I laughed, Daniel's eyes narrowed, just a little. I caught Troy watching me when I wasn't looking. Or maybe I was always looking, and I just told myself I wasn't. The music played low in the background. Something acoustic. Soft. But it sounded wrong. Everything sounded wrong. Daniel started talking about our upcoming anniversary. How he was thinking of booking a trip. Somewhere far. Luxurious. And then Troy said, or maybe just somewhere meaningful. I felt the air freeze. Daniel didn't respond. He just stared at his wine. And me? I felt like I was slipping into a space I couldn't climb back out of. There I was, surrounded by gestures and gifts and good intentions, but all I wanted was to be held by a truth no one was saying. 2 men. One trying to impress me with his wallet. The other, with his presence. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't know who I was supposed to be loyal to. Because when Troy looked at me that night, it wasn't just a look. It was an invitation. Not to do something wrong, but to feel something real. And somewhere deep inside I knew. This wasn't the kind of surprise you celebrate. It was the kind that waits, creeps, builds, and then takes everything you thought you were sure of, and breaks it. I smiled for both of them. Laughed when Troy made that joke about Daniel's cooking skills even though Daniel hadn't stepped foot in the kitchen in months. I nodded along when Daniel talked about work even though I didn't understand a word. And I pretended not to notice the way Troy looked at me when Daniel wasn't watching. But inside, something tore open. Quietly. You know that feeling when someone says your name, but they say it like it means something? Not like a greeting. Not like a reflex. But like they've been waiting to say it. That's how Troy said my name that night. And in that moment, I felt seen. And I hated that it felt good. Because it wasn't supposed to. I had a husband. I had a life. I had vows. But what I didn't have was warmth. And when you go long enough without being touched, even words can feel like fingertips. I told myself I was just tired, that I was reading too much into it. But that night, when I lay in bed next to Daniel, with his back turned, his breathing already deep, his phone buzzing on the nightstand with a message he wouldn't answer till morning, I couldn't stop thinking about Troy. About the way he leaned forward when I spoke. About how he remembered my favorite wine. About how he looked at me like I wasn't fading. And suddenly, all these memories started pushing forward. Things I'd buried. Things I didn't want to feel. Like the time Daniel forgot our anniversary. He'd been in meetings all day. He didn't even call. Just walked in with a tired apology and a half-eaten slice of cake someone gave him at work. I'd spent the whole day cooking. Set the table. Lit candles. Wore the dress he said he loved once, years ago. And he barely looked at me. I remember blowing out the candles alone, tears in my lap, telling myself, it's okay. He works hard. He loves you. You're just being sensitive. But now, in the quiet space between memory and reality, those excuses didn't feel comforting anymore. They felt like lies I told myself to stay sane. And then there was that moment. Months ago. Troy had come by to drop something off for Daniel. He thought I wasn't home. I was upstairs, folding laundry. I heard the door. He stepped inside, called out once, and then, he just stood there. I peeked over the banister. And I saw him looking at a photo of me and Daniel. But he wasn't looking at both of us. He was looking at me. Not like a friend. Not like a brother-in-law might. There was something in his eyes. Something warm, something careful, something dangerous. And now, that look was back. At dinner, at the door, in every glance he thought I didn't see. I wanted to be good. I wanted to be loyal. I wanted to be the woman who could say, no, this is wrong, and mean it. But when someone makes you feel alive again, after years of feeling invisible, you don't always recognize the line until you're standing on the other side of it. And the worst part? I didn't feel guilt. Not yet. I felt relief. Relief that someone still saw me. Still wanted to see me. And that scared me more than anything. Because the moment you start craving someone else's eyes, you've already started walking away from the person who stopped looking. It started small. A few extra seconds at the door when Troy said goodbye. A smile that lingered too long. A silence between us that didn't feel awkward. It felt charged. We started having these casual Friday evenings. Daniel called it unwinding. He said it made things feel normal again. But nothing about it felt normal to me. One night, we played a board game. Something silly. Laughter echoed through the living room like everything was fine. But under the table, Troy's knee brushed mine. I didn't move. Then his fingers grazed my hand. Soft, intentional. And when I finally looked at him, he didn't look away. It wasn't a kiss. Not yet. But it felt heavier than one. A silence louder than any betrayal. Daniel got up to take a call. Always a call. Always an excuse. And the moment he stepped out, Troy leaned closer. His voice was barely above a whisper. You deserve more than this. I didn't answer. I didn't nod. I didn't pull away. But I didn't stop him either. I just sat there, frozen between guilt and desire. And that became our rhythm. Words left unsaid. Touches that weren't quite innocent. Moments that should have ended sooner. But didn't. A few days later, a package arrived in the mail. A thank you note from the spa. Confirmation of a reservation. Daniel's name was on the envelope. But when I opened the card, the handwriting wasn't his. It was Troy's. And I knew because I'd seen it before on birthday cards, on fridge notes, on a post-it once that said, "Don't forget to breathe." It was his. It was always his. I stared at the card for a long time. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Pretend I never saw it. But another part of me, the part that had been starving in silence, held on to it like proof. Proof that someone remembered me, thought of me, wanted me, even if it wasn't spoken aloud. And it all got harder to ignore. The way Troy started showing up without reason. The way Daniel stopped asking if I wanted to talk. It was like I was living two separate lives, one where I kept pretending things were fine, and one where everything felt like it was finally starting to make sense. But it wasn't love. Not yet. It was attention. Dangerous. Addictive. The kind that grows in dark corners. And the closer I got to it, the more I drifted from the woman I thought I was. I stopped checking my lipstick before Daniel came home. But I checked it twice before Troy dropped by. I started dressing up on random afternoons, just in case. Just in case he came over. I hated that about myself. And I loved it too. Because it made me feel alive. Seen. And that was all it took. Just a little more attention than I was used to. And suddenly, the line I swore I'd never cross didn't look so clear anymore. I kept telling myself, nothing's happened. Nothing's really happened. But inside, I knew the truth. When the heart starts reaching, the body is never far behind. Then one night, Daniel didn't come home, and Troy did. It was raining. One of those steady, unrelenting rains that taps against the window like it's trying to remind you of something you've been ignoring. I remember because it was the first time in months I felt warm. I was curled up on the couch, wearing Daniel's old hoodie, the one that used to smell like him, before even that scent faded. The lights were dim. The storm outside felt louder than the silence inside. Then, a knock. Quick. Urgent. I opened the door, and there he was, Troy. Soaked. Shaking. His hair dripping. His eyes, dark, intense, restless. He didn't smile. He didn't make a joke. He just looked at me like he didn't know how to say what he needed to say. And then, finally, he whispered, "He knows." I didn't understand. I blinked. "Daniel?" Troy nodded. "Yeah, he knows. He's known for a while." I froze. What do you mean?" He stepped inside, his clothes dripping water on the hardwood floor. "I wasn't supposed to tell you. But I can't keep doing this." He looked at me, his voice cracking. "He planned it. He wanted to test you. He said he wanted to see if you'd fall." I didn't believe him. At least, I wanted not to. But then everything started clicking. The sudden gift. The dinner. The way Daniel never seemed surprised anymore. The way he watched me laugh at Troy's jokes. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Like the walls around me had been paper all along, and someone just lit a match. Troy stepped closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never meant for it to go this far. I couldn't stop thinking about you. I should have said something. Should have told him to leave. Should have screamed. Should have cried. But I didn't, because part of me had already given in. Not tonight. Not last week. Long before. When I stopped feeling loved. When I stopped feeling enough. And then he kissed me. Slow. Deliberate. Like he wanted to make sure I had time to stop him. But I didn't. I let him. I let him kiss me like he meant it. Because in that moment, I needed it to mean something. And then the door opened. Daniel. He stood there. Not wet. Not angry. Just still. Troy stepped back. I spun around, heart in my throat, hands trembling. I couldn't speak. Daniel didn't blink. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't ask why. He just looked at us. Then at me. And he nodded. Just one slow nod. "I knew it," he said. Flat. Cold. Then he turned. Walked out. No suitcase. No words. No rage. Just the echo of the front door closing behind him. And that sound. It was louder than the thunder outside. The house was silent for days. Not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that scratches at your skin, reminding you with every second that something's broken. Daniel moved into the guest room the same night. He didn't say why. He didn't have to. He didn't pack a bag. Didn't slam the door. didn't even look at me. He just walked in, closed the door behind him, and didn't come out until morning. We became strangers under the same roof. Two ghosts drifting past each other in the hallway. Sharing a kitchen, a mortgage, and nothing else. Troy stopped calling. Stopped texting. Stopped showing up. He disappeared like he'd never been part of the story at all. And maybe that was the worst part. The quiet after. The not knowing. The pretending. No one talked about what happened. But it was there. Everywhere. In the way Daniel couldn't look me in the eye. In the way I flinched every time the front door opened. In the way my own reflection felt like a stranger. I didn't know if Daniel hated me, or if he hated himself for setting the trap, for watching it unfold, for being so sure I would fall. Was that love? To test someone like that? To push them so far just to see if they'd break? I didn't know anymore. And I didn't know if Troy ever really meant it, the touches, the words, the look in his eyes. Or if he was playing a part in Daniel's twisted game. There were moments in the days that followed where I would reach for my phone just to hear his voice, just to ask him why. But I never hit call, because I didn't know what would hurt more, hearing him lie or hearing him tell the truth. Daniel never confronted me. He never yelled, never asked for answers. He just let it sit there. That silence was worse than any fight, worse than any betrayal. Because it meant he'd already made up his mind. Not just about me, but about us. I stopped setting the dinner table for two. Stopped waiting up at night. Stopped wearing the perfume he used to compliment. And he stopped pretending to care. We were still married. Still living under one roof. Still brushing past each other in the kitchen. But the love, the trust, whatever thread we still had was already frayed. Already gone. Sometimes, I'd catch him looking at me when he thought I wasn't watching. Not with anger. Not with sadness. But with this look like I'd confirmed something he'd always believed. That I was capable of falling. That I would fall. And that he was right to stop loving me long before I even realized he had. I replayed it in my mind 1,000 times. The moment Troy kissed me. The moment Daniel stood in the doorway and said nothing. The look in his eyes, not shock, not betrayal, just confirmation. And I keep asking myself, was that the moment I lost him? Or was he already gone, and I just didn't want to see it? I sit in the silence now and I wonder, was it betrayal or something darker? Because betrayal means there was still something sacred to betray. But what if love had already left the room long before the kiss? What if I was clinging to the ghost of a marriage that had been dying in the dark? Did Daniel love me enough to test me? To set up a situation just to prove I wasn't worth trusting? Or did he hate me enough to trap me in a moment he could never unsee? What kind of man does that? What kind of love needs proof that it's failing? And what kind of woman stands in that moment and doesn't walk away? Was I the villain? The unfaithful one? The weak one? Or was I just human? A woman who spent too many nights lying beside a man who never turned toward her. A woman who forgot what it felt like to be touched with intention. A woman who, in a single moment, chose feeling something over feeling nothing at all. I don't try to justify it. Not anymore. But I also don't pretend I was some monster. Because I know what it's like to ache for warmth. To crave connection so deeply that even the wrong touch feels like salvation. And the worst part? Is not the guilt. It's the emptiness that comes after. When all the moments are done and you're left with the echo of your choices. And you still don't know if you made them or if they made you. Have you ever stood at a line, knowing you shouldn't cross it, but still felt yourself drifting, one step, then another, until it was too late to turn back? I ask myself that every night. Not because I don't know the answer, but because I'm still not sure what the question really is. Was I wrong for what I did? Or was I just aching to feel seen again? To be held not just in someone's arms, but in someone's eyes, where I didn't feel like I had to shrink to fit into silence. You tell me, was this betrayal? Or was it something more complicated? A wound born out of years of being unnoticed. A moment that shouldn't have happened, but made me feel human again. I'm not proud, but I'm not pretending either. Because there's a part of every woman that wants to be chosen, wants to be cherished, wants to be wanted. And when that part of you goes unseen for too long, you start looking for mirrors in the wrong places. So I'm asking you if you've ever felt the ache of being invisible. If you've ever made a choice you can't explain but needed in the moment. Tell me, in the comments, was it betrayal? Or was it a cry for connection in the wrong place, at the wrong time? And if stories like this stir something in you, if they speak to the parts you hide even from yourself, then like this video. And subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We unravel the human heart. Desire doesn't knock on your door wearing warning signs. It doesn't come screaming, doesn't carry a flag that says this will ruin everything. No. Sometimes, it comes dressed as friendship, as kindness, as a voice that listens when no one else does. Sometimes, it walks in with flowers and wine, sits across from you at your dinner table, laughs at your jokes, says your name like it matters. And sometimes, it leaves behind a silence you can never unhear. A crack in the foundation that doesn't make a sound until the whole house starts sinking. I don't know if I'd make the same choices again, but I know this. Once trust is broken by design, once someone you love lays out a trap and you walk right into it, believing it might finally be love that's reaching for you, there are no winners. Only echoes.